In the last part of the series, we saw Judah captive in Babylon. They were taken from their land and now forced to live in Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar wanted to assimilate them with his people. I briefly explained that when a nation conquers another land and its people, it's not just about ruling by force. The best way to rule over a people is to spread their culture to younger generations. They take their language, their traditions, their religion, and they teach it to the younger generation. King Nebuchadnezzar tried to do the same thing with Judah when they were taken captive. He called for the best-looking, brightest young men from Judah and educated them for 3 years. All this to further the kingdom of Babylon. As we saw in part 9, Elohim intervened in this process of assimilation, and what happened after that was inverted. King Nebuchadnezzar was humbled and wound up praising Yahweh. This was done in part through Daniel, who was blessed by Elohim with knowledge and the interpretations of dreams. Elohim used these nations to make his great name known to these other nations and empires, establishing his kingdom. Anytime his true servants were tested, he was there to protect them and bring a testimony. Sometimes he used your troubles to reveal his greatness, but it only works when you submit to him and let it show. There was more evidence to be shown of the greatness of Yahweh, and this is what this part of the series will show. Let's begin. So we left off with Judah in captivity in Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar had multiple interactions with the people of Judah that caused him to praise Yahweh. His change of heart was influenced from Daniel and his companions. In the end, Elohim humbled Nebuchadnezzar so much that Nebuchadnezzar praised Elohim as the king of heaven. So Nebuchadnezzar's reign had ended, and it was turned over to his son Belshazzar. Belshazzar, the king, had a great feast for 1,000 of his great men. He was drinking wine in the presence of the 1,000. While he tasted the wine, Belshazzar gave the command to bring the gold and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple which had been in Jerusalem, so that the king and his mighty men, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them. So they brought the gold vessels that had been taken from the temple of the house of Elohim, which had been in Jerusalem. The king and his mighty men, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze and iron, wood and stone. In that same hour, the fingers of a man's hand appeared and wrote opposite on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote it. Then the king's countenance changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his hips were loosened and his knees knocked against each other. The king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. The king spoke, saying to the wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads this writing and tells me its interpretation shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around his neck, and he shall be the third ruler in the kingdom." Now all the king's wise men came, but they could not read the writing or even interpret for the king. King Belshazzar was greatly troubled. His countenance was changed, and his mighty men were astonished. His queen came to the banquet hall and said, "O king, live forever. Do not let your thoughts trouble you, nor let your countenance change. There is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy Elohim, and in the days of your father, light and understanding and wisdom like the wisdom of the gods were found in him. Your father the king made him chief of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers, inasmuch as excellent spirit, knowledge, understanding, interpreting dreams, solving riddles, and explaining enigmas were found in this Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will give the interpretation." Then Daniel was brought in before the king. The king spoke and said to Daniel, "Are you that Daniel, who was one of the captives from Judah, whom my father the king brought from Judah? I have heard of you, that the spirit of Elohim is in you, and that the light and understanding and excellent wisdom are found in you. Now the wise men, the astrologers, have brought in before me that they should read this writing and make known to me its interpretation, but they could not give the interpretation of the thing. And I have heard of you, and that you can give interpretations and explain enigmas. Now if you can read the writing and make known to me its interpretation, you shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around your neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom." Daniel answered and said before the king, "Let your gifts be for yourself, and give your rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing to the king and make known to him the interpretation. O king, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father a kingdom and a majesty, glory, and honor. And because of the majesty that he gave him, all peoples, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. Whomever he wished, he executed. Whomever he wished, he kept alive. Whomever he wished, he set up. And whomever he wished, he put down. But when his heart was lifted up, and his spirit was hardened in pride, he was disposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. Then he was driven from the sons of men. His heart was made like the beast, and his dwelling was with the wild donkeys. They fed him with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High God rules in the kingdom of men, and appoints over it whomever he chooses. But you, his son, Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, although you knew all this, and you have lifted yourself up against Yahweh. They have brought the vessels of his house before you, and you and your mighty men, your wives and your concubines, have drunk wine from them, and you have praised the gods of silver and gold, bronze and iron, wood and stone, which you do not see or hear or know. And Elohim, who holds your breath in his hands and owns all your ways, you have not glorified. Then the fingers of the hand were sent from him, and this is the inscription that was written: Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. This is the interpretation of each word. Mene, Elohim has numbered your kingdom and finished it. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Perez, your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then Belshazzar gave the command, and they clothed Daniel with purple and put a chain of gold around his neck and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. But that very night Belshazzar, king of the Chaldeans, was slain, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. The empire of Babylon was overtaken. This was the second Babylon. The first one was from Nimrod, the second being taken to great heights by King Nebuchadnezzar, and the last one was yet to come. This goes back to King Nebuchadnezzar's dream in part 9. It was told to him in a dream given to him by Elohim that this would all happen, and of course it did. Elohim keeps his word. King Darius set over the kingdom 120 viceroys to be over the whole kingdom, and over them 3 governors, whom Daniel was one. Daniel distinguished himself above the governors and viceroys because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king gave thought to setting him over the whole realm. So the governors and viceroys sought to find some charge against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find no charge or fault, because he was faithful, nor was there any error or fault found in him. Then these men said, "We shall not find any charge against this Daniel unless we find it against him concerning the law of his God." So these governors and viceroys gathered before the king and said thus to them, "King Darius, live forever. All the governors of the kingdom, the administrators and viceroys, the counselors and advisors have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whoever petitions any god or man for 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish a decree and sign the writing, so that it cannot be changed, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not alter." And King Darius signed the written decree. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went home, and in his upper room, with his windows open towards Jerusalem, he knelt down on his knees 3 times that day, and prayed, and gave thanks before Elohim, as was his custom since early days. Then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before Elohim. And they went before the king and spoke concerning the king's decree. "Have you not signed a decree that every man who petitions any god or man within 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions?" The king answered and said, "The thing is true, according to the law of Medes and Persians, which does not alter." So they answered and said before the king, "Daniel, who is one of the captains from Judah, does not show due regard for you, O king, or for the decree that you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day." And the king, when he heard these words, was greatly displeased with himself, and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him. Then these men approached the king, and said to the king, "Now, O king, that is the law of the Medes and Persians, that no decree or statute which the king establishes may be changed." So the king gave the command, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. But the king spoke, saying to Daniel, "Elohim, whom you serve continually, he will deliver you." Then a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and the signets of his mighty men, that the purpose concerning Daniel might not be changed. Now the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting, and no musicians were brought before him. Also his sleep went from him. And the king arose very early in the morning and went in haste to the den of lions. And when he came to the den, he cried out with a lamenting voice to Daniel. The king spoke, saying, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" Then Daniel said to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angels and shut the lions' mouths, so that they have not hurt me, because I was found innocent before him. And also, O king, I have done no wrong before you." Now the king was exceedingly glad for him, and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no injury whatsoever was found on him, because he believed in his God. And the king gave the command, and they brought those men who accused Daniel, and they cast them into the den of lions. And the lions overpowered them, and broke all their bones in pieces, before they ever came to the bottom of the den. Then King Darius wrote, "To all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom men must tremble and must fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and steadfast forever. His kingdom is one which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall endure to the end. He delivers and rescues, and he works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, who has delivered Daniel from the power of lions." So Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and Cyrus, king of Persia. Now in the first year of Darius' reign, Daniel understood that the words of Yahweh came to the prophet Jeremiah, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. This word can be found in Jeremiah chapter 29. It says, "Now these are the words of the letter that Jeremiah the prophet sent from Jerusalem unto the residue of the elders, which were carried away captives, and to the priests, and to the prophets, and to all the people whom Nebuchadnezzar had carried away captive from Jerusalem to Babylon. Thus say Yahweh, the God of Israel, unto all that are carried away captives, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon, build houses and dwell in them, plant gardens and eat their fruit, take wives and beget sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons and give your daughters to husbands, so that they may bear sons and daughters, that you may be increased in there and not diminished. And seek the peace of the city where I have caused you to be carried away captive, and pray to Yahweh for it. For in its peace you will have peace. For thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, do not let your prophets and your diviners who are in your midst deceive you, nor listen to your dreams which you have caused to be dreamed. For they prophesy falsely to you in my name. I have not sent them, says Yahweh. For thus says Yahweh, after 70 years are completed at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word toward you and cause you to return to this place." Jeremiah prophesied that the captivity would only be 70 years, and Daniel recognized the time and started praying for this deliverance. It would come very soon when Cyrus, the king of Persia, took control. The book of Daniel has 12 chapters. The content of this part of the series and part 9 can be found in chapters 1 through 6. After that, it goes into a lot of prophecy. The book of Daniel holds much end-time prophecy. Elohim gave visions of the end that really shook Daniel up. If you want to understand end times prophecy, you should read chapters 7 through 12. It's a book that you really must read to understand end times. But this story is important to grasp because it covers what happened while Judah was in captivity. These are the important things you should understand. 1. Jeremiah warned Judah before they were taken captive. You can find this warning in Jeremiah chapter 25. 2. King Nebuchadnezzar was shown dreams from Elohim that only Daniel was able to interpret. None of Babylon's astrologers, magicians, or sorcerers had enough power to do so. 3. Elohim gave Nebuchadnezzar a dream about the coming world empires and the kingdom of Messiah that would consume all these empires and never be destroyed. 4. Elohim humbled King Nebuchadnezzar, later having King Nebuchadnezzar praise Elohim. 5. Babylon was overtaken by the Medes-Persian Empire. 6. Daniel was betrayed for worshiping Elohim and was sent to the lion's den, which Elohim delivered him from. 7. The king of Medes decreed that his kingdom was to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, very much like what Nebuchadnezzar commanded his people after Daniel's companions were saved from the fiery furnace. 8. Jeremiah prophesied that Judah's captivity would only be for 70 years. All this information just confirms just how awesome and great Elohim is. He truly is the Most High and worthy to be praised. All these other nations and their gods don't have stories of defeating Elohim. And anytime Elohim's people were taken and placed under curses, they were always warned and always provoked it. If believers in the Messiah all would just read their Bibles and apply it, the message would ring loud and clear that we need to submit to His will because He is not to be toyed with. Can you imagine how bad of a decision it would be to know about His word and still not make it a priority to read it? He's giving you many different lessons on how He reacts to sin, as well as how He reacts to those who love and trust Him. The worst mistake would be to say with your mouth that you love Him, while at the same time keep your heart from Him. This series is to drive the point home that He is awesome and His word tells us about Him. The world doesn't know Him because they don't read His word. Please don't be a part of that. Right now, we're all in the lion's den. It's a wicked world, and we must submit to Him. And we must trust in Him. But we must be willing to go through whatever He wants us to go through in order to serve Him and make His great name known, in order to minister to others. It's our purpose. It's His will. We must submit to it. He is coming soon. And if you're watching this and have been watching my series, He wants you to be ready for Him. Make sure you are. Once again, if this blessed you, please share it with others. If you have not already subscribed to my channel, please do so. I appreciate all the love and support you all give. It really helps me each week in making these videos. Thank you for it. I love you all.